You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today and we have another amazing show lineup for you all. We have our special guest, Yogi Mueller. He is an author and someone you need to know, because if you are a geek like me, well, guess what? I just had a good chat with him. We almost did a whole full show in the green room. He's a geek as well in a good way. He's the author of The Great Slapping, The Power of Mentorship, founder of Craft Leadership, and a leadership expert who spent over 30 years shaping talent programs for places you know, Disney, Hilton, and more. He is also a former professional comedian, so if you get some giggles throughout the show today, it's going to be because of him. Yogi also brings the realness to stories. He gives his base practical tools and honest insight with zero fluff. He's also someone that you will appreciate. He has a book, the G.R.I.T Index Assessment, and we're going to dive into that a little bit later in the show. But first, I'm going to cut to the chase and catch my breath because you have a lot on your resume. Yogi, first and foremost, man, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It's like I said, we had a great green room chat, and I'm totally just into this vibe that we've got going on today. So I'm looking forward to see where it goes.
Well, like I said in the intro, 30 years plus career in leadership and talent development that took you places like Disney and Hilton. What were some of the core values that you gained from those experiences that kind of helped shape what you do today?
You know, great question. One of the values I think that I had to learn to get into, and actually two of them, and one is that concept of feedback and understanding the gift that it is. Really appreciating what Socrates, when he said, the wise man is the one who knows he knows nothing. And I think a lot of us struggle to get over that hump. And, we hold on to this brand that we have and this reputation we think we have, and that we want to be competitive and be better than the person next to us. But the more I grow, the more I learn, the more I age, the more I wise up, is realize, I still don't know everything. And I think that humility, that aspect right there, was something that I had to learn the hard way through a lot of slapping, as they say. And the second thing that I fell into through Hard Knocks was this concept of gratitude, because I realized that, when you get to a certain point and you get off that high horse or whatever you're riding in on, you realize you didn't get here on your own. You got here because of the investment. You spoke of somebody very highly that was very important in your life, that invested in you for years, with no expected payoff on her part, just because she felt you were worth it and can turn into something amazing. My story is peppered with all those individuals, and that gratitude not only, again, humbles you, but it also makes you want to give back to others and be that person for other people.
And I have to give a shout out, very first time on the show. So very first time giving this shout out publicly. But yeah, he's referencing to Miss Waldmeyer, great influence back in the day when I was a youngin'. Not that old, but I'm old enough to be old. But it's amazing. You talk about gratitude, but gratitude is, I believe, is an individual's superpower. When a person can become thankful for not just the opportunities they have, but to maximize the stones that they have in their hand, versus we live in a world where we're always comparing ourselves to the next person. Like, how can I keep up with so-and-so because they seem like they have it all together, or they have something better than I have currently. And it's so easy to skip on what we have in our hand currently. And gratitude, it almost becomes the secret sauce that makes those stones powerful, because when you start using what you have and stop trying to reach out for the things you think you need, that's where the magic happens.
I had a great point, and I love that, the superpower aspect, because that gratitude also translates into how you do things as a leader too. Because I remember there were parts of my life where, again, I'm still driven. I still have drive. I still have desires. I still have goals that I want to do. But what would happen earlier in my career, both in terms of how I managed myself and even how I managed my teams, was we'd have a goal, we'd achieve it. But by that time, I was already thinking about the next 3 goals that we were behind on. So when you achieve that certain level of success, I never stopped long enough to realize it, respect it, and appreciate it, because I was already feeling I was behind the 8 ball for the next one, and I had to work twice as hard to get there. And it would just be this constant cycle of just not taking a moment to smell the roses. And I also got called on the carpet once because I was doing that to my team. And when you take that moment to stop and really appreciate how far you've come, the challenges you've overcome, the things you've gained, the knowledge you've garnered, the experiences that you have, the choices that you made, the good choices that you made, right? Even the bad choices, if you learn from them, just to sit back and go, okay, I am who I am today because of that. And I'm happy with that, right? And take that moment to really appreciate that and then move on. And if you're leading somebody, do the same thing, because if your team reaches a particular goal and you don't take that moment to celebrate that success, to give them that satisfaction and that opportunity to be proud of what they do and grateful for what it got them to get there, it's just going to be moving on. And the concept of gratitude just kind of floats away, as well as the feeling of self-pride, self-love, because you never feel you accomplished anything.
And you also, speaking of self-love, when someone takes their path seriously, you have to have mentors. Like we kind of been talking about this before the show even started. But from your lens, you talk about mentorship that has teeth. And why is encouragement alone no longer good enough in today's space? Because a lot of times we go with the flow and just hope for the best, and that's not always a good look.
Yeah, and I think coupled that with the fact that we've bubble wrapped everything to take care of people's sensitivities, and I think psychological safety has turned into an excuse in a lot of cases. And when people need tough feedback by people that care about them and believe in them, it's seen as an attack, even though that the action is an investment in helping them get better. And so we're very sensitive about what people say to us, and people are very sensitive about what they say to other people. They don't want to be taken out of context or be accused of anything. So why am I going to bother saying anything? And I think that what that does is it just separates it. There's a rip in the fabric of that concept of mentorship. If we're afraid to get gritty, and really invest in people. And sometimes, you hinted at that, people are unwilling or unable to listen and do anything with the feedback they get. So sometimes you got to get a little rough. And by the way, disclaimer and asterisk, I don't believe in physical slapping in any way, shape, or form. The great slapping is that painful kind of smack you get by some feedback. And it's going to hurt a little bit potentially, and then you get that clarity and you realize, oh, the cobwebs go away and the haze lifts and you see things clearly. So probably your mentor has slapped you a couple of times from the musical world, and yeah, it might have stung at that moment, but then you realize, oh, yeah, maybe I need to take this new course or this new direction.
In order to have any transformative progress in life, you have to be uncomfortable. When you're comfortable, you become lazy, you become selfish, you become self-centered, and you don't even worry about anybody else, because when you're in that mindset, that frame is all about me, myself, and I. You're not contributing anything greater than yourself. And so if you can touch on that, because effective mentorship, that looks like making people uncomfortable.
I knew I was going to get to some interesting depths with you on this call today. You know, I had an employee that very inspirational employee, and she loved quotes, and she shared one with me that has stuck with me ever since. And that's, good sea captains don't learn how to sail on smooth waters. I'm like, boom. Right. And you're absolutely right that growth happens in friction. I call sometimes the things that I do with people sandpaper learning, right? Because, when you're fixing a piece of furniture and you're about ready to put the final coat on, what do you do before you put that varnish on? You rough it up with sandpaper to make it smooth so you can put that final coat on. And sometimes that feedback requires that level of sandpaper to kind of get through the ego, get through the noise that you have going in the head, get through that self-confidence and that fear, and really see that there's somebody on the other side of that feedback that is not satisfied with what you are right now because they can see who you could be, and they're going to help you get there. And once that light bulb goes on, there's nothing stopping you.
Once again, let's Refocus Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Yogi. And when you look at how some people are not just avoiding feedback sometimes, but they treat it like it's a plague, like it's something that is foreign, like it's not normal. But how do you find reason with dealing with that fear of receiving that feedback? And what are some ways we can prevent ourselves from sabotaging ourselves and our teams?
So you mentioned the G.R.I.T index, and that's something that I've done a lot of work with how people receive and process and do stuff with feedback. And the G.R.I.T stands for get over yourself, reassess with honesty, invest in improvement, and treasure the lessons and growth. And the first two, get over yourself, that's all ego. That's the amygdala. That's the fight, flight, kind of mechanism when our brains were involved when we were going to be eaten by saber-toothed tigers. And that's why we had to respond quickly. Now, if somebody says, oh, I don't like that paragraph you wrote, that has the same impact as getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So we're going to, fight and be real offensive, or we're going to be, pitch a fit and ignore and run out of the room. I think we need to get people to understand. Well, get people, that's kind of a bad word. We need to work with individuals that you are truly believing their potential is untapped. And I like in the description of your show, you talk about that unlocked potential or that hidden potential. And that's so important because sometimes people don't even realize it. They're subconsciously blocking it out and not achieving that. Establishing that trust in that relationship with that individual is core. Because they have to understand that your feedback, and again, sometimes it might sting a little, is coming from a place of true investment, about lifting them up, and it's not about tearing them down. They have to get over that, right? Social media has put us all in rabbit holes that not only just surround us with people that think and act and believe like us, and so everything is smooth and calm there, no rough waters, but we're also given rabbit holes what makes us not love ourselves, whether our self-image, our choices, our lifestyles, our bodies, or whatever it is, right? It makes us feel inferior. Look, so you've got a negative self-image, and you're surrounded by bubble-wrapped opinions. And so those two things alone create a scenario where that constructive but sometimes stinging feedback is just seen as a weapon. And so I think the trust is very, very important there in building that relationship with those individuals. And they have to, and the individuals you're giving feedback to, need to come at least with 51% of the energy in the conversation. Now, I know you talked about your great mentor, but I guarantee you she didn't chase you down. She was going to be always there for you, but you had to bring at least 51% of that relationship to the table. And that's another important thing. The person is got to want to be better and has the desire to do more and be more. And once you have that trust and then that desire, I think you're gonna find amazing power in that. But you got to get there first.
It's like someone who was on my show a while back. Don't ask me who, because I just remember the phrase. I'm paraphrasing what it said, but it says like when you're playing catch with someone, it's no fun if the other person can't throw it back. It's no fun if you can't throw it back. So to emphasize what you said, you need each other in the process. Like, you need her to be able to do her part, but she needs to let go and allow you to do your part. It's like an airport. What makes good of an airport if all you have is runways? Hello, you need airplanes. Well, same thing. Well, if you only have airplanes, hello, you need runways. So it all works together for the good. So understanding how things are meant to be used. Like, I had a great instructor who talked about tools, and he said it doesn't do anyone good if you just play with the tools and just monkey around with the tools. He said you have to understand what are the function of each tool. What does this tool represent and why? And then he said you can build something great.
I love it. Yep, absolutely. And that, again, the reason I put the G first, get over yourself, ego is everything. And once you can see that, once you can get over yourself and open yourself up, there's no telling what you can achieve.
You say potential is not enough. When you look through the lens of organization, trying to not just build morale, but build future leaders, what does that mean in their world when they're with their teams and they're trying to tackle these issues and turn the page to the next level?
So we were talking about trumpets before, and I feel, potential is a lot like a trumpet. You can have, I'm a big fan of Maynard Ferguson and Miles Davis and all those greats, right? Trumpet players. But you can and so the potential is in the trumpet, right? In terms of allowing you to do great things. But I can give a trumpet to, 10 people, and maybe one person knows how to blow a trumpet. So the potential, people have potential, but sometimes they need help unlocking it. And really, again, as I mentioned, either unwilling because they're scared or unable because they don't know how. And so mentors and organizations, they need to, first of all, identify who has that runway, who has that potential, who is capable of doing more and being more, and then ensuring that they have processes and programs and interactions to help them get there. And here's the kicker. One key does not unlock every door. So if you have, again, 10 people, you might have to approach these individuals 10 different ways to truly unleash the potential that they have in there, which is not just great for them, but think of the benefit of the organization. If you have all the people in your organization operating at their full potential, that's a pretty good return on investment there, I think.
One question that comes to mind is, am I performing or am I growing? Because there's a big difference of someone who just shows up every day and goes through the routine, whether you're an employee or you're CEO. Are you actually growing because everything around you is a reflection on your growth? Or are you just performing? You're just doing the routines. You're just hitting the regular numbers. Like, you're just playing it safe. You're comfortable. How do we break from performing to actually making sure we're growing into our fullest potential?
So, we've been talking a lot about music, right? And you think about these artists that have been on the charts for 40 years, right? And they have their 10 hit songs, right? That when they do a concert, everybody wants to hear these 10 hit songs. Well, after 40 years, they get pretty tired of doing those 10 hit songs over. No matter how much they vary them, they get boring. And some artists refuse to even play those 10 songs. Not even ask Elton John to play Crocodile Rock anymore. He'll smack you up the side of the head. Think about that in terms of performance, right? If your goal is to always sell out a show, okay, that's good. Some people might enjoy that. But if you want to do more and be more, sometimes you have to get out of that comfort zone. Sometimes you have to go in the area of uncomfort. You have to open up new doors. You have to go into that friction that we talked about earlier, your stretch goals, trying new things. That's where growth occurs, not in doing the same thing over and over again. You don't dig a new hole by digging the same one deeper, right? And so you have to seek out those opportunities. And that's why, if you're not able to do that yourself because of fear or ignorance, for lack of a better term. Having somebody, whether it's an organization, create opportunities for you that put you out of your comfort zone, or those special individuals or mentors that, sometimes kick you in the rear end to get you out of those areas.
Once again, listen, I'll be Focused Radio and watching us online, talking to our special guest today, Yogi Mueller. And I have to ask you this, with all the experiences that you've been able to have, we mentioned this, mentioned Hilton. We sometimes forget our small wins early on in our careers. And I believe those small wins are the main reason why we're able to hit these home runs in the current space. What were the small wins back in your day that gained you confidence to get the bigger wins later?
In terms of being somebody that has kind of had mentorship as a tent pole in terms of what I do and what my why is, I think it was opportunities where I had, and again, this was before I even understood what mentorship was. I didn't understand the structure and the purpose, but I kind of had roles where I played that in somebody else's lives. And then I saw a growth arc. I saw them grow. I saw them transform. I think it was a word that you used, I think. And I'm like, man, well, that's pretty powerful stuff. That's incredible. I want to do more of that. And so the more I understood and had those opportunities, then I started seeking them out. Then I started working with younger people, teaching at the university, building mentorship programs and leadership development programs and organizations to create these environments where we can take somebody that's in position A, and by the time that this program is over or that it has run its course, they're at like part M or N or O. They're completely down the road. They've grown personally and professionally. And then we get the benefit of sitting back and going, yep, that's awesome. That's awesome. And there's nothing more rewarding than to know that your investment in them helped. Not did it or was fully responsible, but there's some interaction that you had with that individual that helped them see who they really are and who they really could be. It's pretty cool. Sometimes you need that matchbox to help you strike. And without it, sometimes you're left hanging like, man, there's something missing here. We need to have a cliche and story rap battle, you and I. We just kind of go back and forth with these alliterations and these little adages things. I mean, we could go on forever. That's fantastic. It's funny because sometimes it goes over people's heads when I use metaphors and stuff, but I appreciate your art background because I feel like as creatives, we can't help but to think outside the box. I remember, not to go down a rabbit hole, but I remember growing up coloring books in grade school, and I was always trying to stay outside the lines. I always made sure mine was different than anybody else's. And I feel like that is how life should be. You should not just play it safe. If I would play it safe, this show would not be where it is right now. It started from the barbershop to the top is what people say. And that wasn't by accident. That was by a lot of people behind me who supported in the right time and place. Mm-hmm. And because of that and maximizing those seeds planted, it didn't fail. If anything, it kept its continued growth. Because if people invest in you and they help you, the worst thing you can do is have it be wasted. Someone took time and energy to pause, and lightning doesn't strike twice. They took the time to really give you a moment of clarity, a moment of teaching, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that it changed our movements in life. It's like a ripple effect. You take a stone, you throw it in the pond. Like growing up, camping, whatever, you try to skip across the water. But if you notice and you look closely, when the stone hits the water, it ripples.
And the ripples start small, but they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they just fade out into the distance. That should be what we are doing when people take the time to invest in us or give us a teaching moment or a reflecting moment, because we become that ripple effect. And then everything we do, like someone said about a couple of weeks ago on my show, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So everything you're doing is a ripple effect, like a domino effect. Everything is just setting all these signals. And I know I'm getting on a tangent here, but landing a plane, it serves its purpose and it keeps marking its territory.
You know, I love that. Again, we need to have a metaphor battle. This is fantastic. So, you know, a couple of things you said really inspired me. One, if I think about all the big growth moments in my life, it was when I took risks, is when I stepped outside that box, as you said. And those risks led to big positive changes in my life, which maybe not have happened if I didn't do that. And the second about the ripple effect is, you know, if you have this concept of stewardship and you want to leave people better than they found you, and that, as you said, it's consistent. It's everything you do. You know, I've had conversations with people that I had known 30 years ago, and they go, well, do you know that when you had this conversation with me, you changed my life? No, I'm sorry. I didn't. I'm glad I did. But you don't realize the impact you have on people. You don't realize that those ripples that are being caused by your constant just investment in others, when those are going to catch and when there's not. But that's not the purpose of why you do it. But the cosmos comes back and reinforces that if you are consistent, you may change lives.
Boom, mic drop. I mean, you probably talk for another 30 minutes. I know we fly out of time, but I'm going to squeeze one more thought before we sign off. And the people who've been watching the news, you know, a lot of people have been excited with NASA and the accomplishments they've been able to hit recently. I can't help but to think, like, I've been watching like the different speeches and press conferences and the feedback, all of the astronauts and what they were talking about, the mission, the command center in Houston, all that, all the people who had a role and they played the role. They did their part. They did their job. They paid attention to the crucial details. It's the timing. Like, everything was a window of time. If it was out of sync, if it was out of pocket, it will jeopardize the mission. I say that to say this, everything that we're talking about on this episode, that is the same with our lives. When we get out of alignment, out of sync, when we're not close to that mission, anything that is outside of what is supposed to be in that design, in our procedure, it can jeopardize the mission. It can cause it to fold. It can cause it to have the potential to be great, to having a catastrophic failure. And I want you to kind of take that little spaghetti sauce that is whipped up, and I want you to kind of tie it in a full circle.
Close it up.
And close it up for us.
You know, you're absolutely right. Our lives are just little individual, you know, missions to the moon, right? And just incredibly complicated, chaotic, dynamic, ever-changing. But I guarantee you, most of us don't have the entire brain power, strength, and technology of NASA to keep us on track. What do have? We have our awareness, we have our humility, and we have people around us that are willing to be our mission control. We have people around us that are willing to make sure that, and to tell us, hey, you're not on trajectory. You're falling off. And to give us warning. You know, you can have 100 people at NASA directing a spaceship, but if that captain in the ship is not going to listen to mission control and hit another button, that's on them. Okay? Well, you have the option to hit button A or button B. And people around you are telling you to hit the button that you should be hitting. We're a free will species, right? But I think if everybody realizes and appreciates those people around them that can help them stay on trajectory and reach new heights, that's where the power is. And that's how we can control the chaos and this vast, expansive mission that is our lives. How's that for a ribbon?
That was heck of a good job. I'm going to let it stay there. That steak is done, and it doesn't need any more fire. It's good to go. And on that note, listen, I'll be focused ready and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Yogi Mueller. I'm telling you, this was like finger snapping poetry episode right here. So I want to say thanks for not just flowing with me, because I never get to do this with everybody. It takes a special type of person to flow like this. And I want to say thanks for that. And people want to keep in touch with what you're doing. What's the best way they can find you online?
The best way to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn, and you can find me there. Connect with me. I'd love to chat with you. And craftleadership.net is my website.
Like always, I want to say to you, Yogi, thank you for your time.
My absolute pleasure, bro. Thank you.